My name is Rhonda Kitchens. I am your librarian, and I'm glad to help you with another library webinar. Not just help, I hope to inspire you. We're going over today sociology and psychology, very specifically, though sometimes they're not quite the same thing, sometimes they're integrated, and sometimes they're opposites. We are going to go over them together as one and try to get something out of that wonderful process. In this series, we've talked about science research, business research, and other subject-based research, but psychology and sociology are slightly unusual in that they are driven by two major organizations, the APA for the American Psychological Association and the American Sociological Association, ASA. Both even have their own citation and documentation styles. You're probably familiar with APA style, but only if you go into sociology will you ever have to do ASA. So, essentially, to some degree, we'll probably put some qualifications in there and some small text. Psychology is about an individual, and an individual's piece, looking at observation, experimentation, but the individual's life, facing out. Sociologists, to some degree, explanations, disclaimers, very small, somewhere. I just want you to know sometimes information can change according to context. But sociologists in general will be the approach to the group experience with the individual in it. So right there, if you sort of felt your head go crunchy, yes, you're feeling the definitions. That is correct. I tried to put these two images in here to sort of get you to feel this impact. Now, if you're a person not going into psychology or sociology, this also gives you a research advantage when you're trying to look at the micro and macro of different types of things. You're like, hey, I can look at it through a lens of sociology, or perhaps a lens of psychology. Yes, this is a competitive and interesting way to use research. I'm going to try to, though, talk about how it may be used in the professional and academic settings and give you a really big picture of the battle in research. First of all, to some degree, I'm over generalizing just because there's been such a weft of time, as it were. I'm talking about two different disciplines, but to some degree, there have been times perhaps when qualitative research has been dismissed or treated as a lowly thing in sciences. So sociology and psychology felt they did need to step up into the realm of more scientific evidence that can be measured. I personally am a librarian, and I believe all forms of research have value. But you will be out in an environment where you will have a rubric or assignments that will tell you to do different things in context of that work and to meet the needs of that instructor. Always, always, always follow your instructor's directions. If they want a scholarly, empirical article from a library, credible source, that is what you need to find. You may feel that you can find it via Google and other ways, and you might feel differently about what may be empirical and scientific. But no, this is what you're going to do. Let's look at it. First of all, when you go to a database and you see that magic button that says Scholarly Journal, I want you to keep thinking about that. It says Scholarly Journal. In a scholarly journal, there are many types of things, including scholarly articles. A database can only tell you what is a scholarly journal. All right? This is very important for your current and future academic life. So, and there can be many types of things. And when a professor may ask for a scholarly journal, they may be asking actually for research or an empirical piece, which has been my most common thing that I've seen here and other places. But the realm of scholarly types of work is much broader. Literature reviews, for instance, you may see those in the English 102 or other courses. These are pieces that don't have like compartments. They do have a bit of a form. They have references and a bunch of other things, but they are valid in context of that discipline and what you're going to use them as. Systematic reviews. I didn't change system. Systematic reviews are fantastic in medicine and nursing. These are the things where you take all sorts of research, compile it together. When I say you, other people, you're reading their work. There may be multiple authors, usually there are, and there will be definitely multiple research pieces that look at an individual item. It will be crunched together. It will be used and measured quantitatively, generally. And it will give you best practices. That is the highest level of value in terms of health and medicine and nursing in many, many cases. And if you turn that in sometimes as a scholarly article, because it doesn't have the traditional parts of a research or empirical article, you might find that bounce back. So make sure that you ask and you understand what your professor needs. You as the researcher, I absolutely challenge and encourage you to have a systematic review on your topic anywhere you can find them, because not only do they look at all these different studies, crunch it all down, give you best practices, but they actually give you, the reader and researcher, different lenses to review information that you may not be that familiar with. So your librarian is going to find infinite richness, well, in this, in so many types of research. So another thing that you may get currently and in your academic future is that you will need to find a quantitative or qualitative article. Generally, that's going to be in this field research, in this area of research, and empirical article, which we're going to look at in great detail. And to help you remember what they are, because you know what? They are so much alike. How do I tell them different in the crunch of research? First of all, students, you can absolutely, young scholars, use quantitative or qualitative in your search keywords and your search strategy. That takes a lot of pain and suffering off of you right there. But you may have to branch out to find deeper things. Quantitative will be those types of articles that are working from data sets. They're crunching numbers. They're using the math. They're setting things up that can be measured numerically. And they're going to provide that optimal scientific value that many disciplines prefer. Quantitative, think quantified. Quantitative, quantified, numbers, data, measures. Qualitative, see how I softened it? Qualitative is going to be open-ended. It's going to be wide open. It will give you diaries. It's going to give you narratives. It's not going to make people go to a scale of 1 to 5 and pick the thing that means the most. By the way, that's a Likert scale. And we see it a lot in some things we get from the college itself. And that's quantitative. But do you know how sometimes at the very end they go, hey, now that you've completed these scales, what would you like to see in terms of change or differences or services? That, my friend, is the qualitative portion. And that will make that piece, and I'm simplifying, but I think this is going to help you, that's going to be mixed methods, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing. Sometimes the qualitative opens the door that the scientific method of just looking for data sets and measuring things with numbers may not open. They actually have a beautiful thing when you use them together. And you could actually use mixed methods as your research method, as your research strategy, sorry. The DSM, also known as the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, up to currently number 5, is probably one of the most well-known references for any discipline out there. It's often used or referred to in movies and all sorts of wonderful places. And absolutely, the library does have a copy. It is in reference. You can reach it by reaching out to us and perhaps signing up to use a room, and we could provide it for you to use while in the library. You'll just have to make a reservation. Also, you could ask us to make copies of pages or sections that are useful to you. Just reach out to us because, yes, we have the DSM. So I'm going to do a little touchback on the nature of evidence and the necessary rigor per context, per discipline, per course, per assignment. The evidence-based pyramid is used in quite a few disciplines. This is an example of one from nursing. This provides the whole experience of the patient, wherein the outcome is preferably good health. As you will see, best scientific evidence is part of that. Experience, that's research like you as a student, a young scholar, are doing now. And one thing may be considered higher than the others. In this case, in this particular year, this pyramid was built. The systematic review, as I stated before, was considered the best evidence because, especially in medicine nursing, what it does is it helps come up with the best practices on various small types of things that a health or medical person or center might do. The next thing would be randomized controlled trials. That's where you give a placebo to one group and the medicine to the other to see if there's any sort of difference, a measurable difference. Sometimes that is also considered like, is that actually ethical? And that would be a good paper, but we're not going to cover that here. It goes down to the very bottom. There was a time when perhaps these types of ideas were not practiced and the editorial expert opinion were widely used. But in modern times, that thing is at the bottom of the pyramid. In a few spaces, you will hear that beep and you might wonder, what is that? That, my friends, is Ask a Librarian. That's right. When you're on the library page, a little slide will come out and ask you if you need help, or you could go over and queue it up yourself. It is a live 24/7 experience that you can use to support yourself while you're here at Big Bend Community College, and likely when you go to your next college as well. It's a pretty common thing. Online library help 24/7. So I want to just look at one more thing on this little pyramid before we move away, and that's case series and case reports. Those are also very important in psychology and sociology. And based on what you're doing, they might have a different place on your work, in rubrics, and an evidence-based practice. So essentially, it's like 1, I think, to 5 people, and that may vary per discipline. And sometimes it's emergency type situations where these are written. They're about a one-off sort of situation or a group of people found themselves in and how this particular thing was solved. And it's very individual about the person. So unlike the systematic review, which uses many people crushed through the lens of a bunch of criteria while looking at hundreds of different research projects, these are sometimes one person, this thing happened, how we solved it. But there's still value in that kind of research. And my mother was actually cured by a case report of one woman who had the same disease. So they do have a great deal of value. Just understand in different places, if you're asked to turn in a scholarly peer-reviewed article that is empirical, the case study may not meet that level of evidence, though it may be very important in your actual practice. So there you are in your scholarly journal, because that's all the database can give you, a scholarly journal. You need to make sure to meet the needs of being an empirical, scholarly research article. And sometimes these are used in very different ways. I just want you to kind of see them and hear them all together. Sometimes peer-reviewed is also in there. But you know that those pieces, the systematic review will have title, authors, abstract, literature review, and references. But it does not have these pieces. The literary criticism will have all these pieces. And in fact, it will somewhat composed of this. But it will not have these pieces. Your case study will have all of these pieces, but it will not have these pieces. And that's why I separated them out. And these are part of the things that are in the scholarly journal. But the scholarly article, empirical article, the peer-reviewed article will be something that is generally composed of these pieces as well. And when you look at these pieces, this is where the author and researcher's information lives and thrives. So, the method is very, very important. There's so many items that will be covered. The goal of the article is that it be transparent and it can be replicated. So we'll start out. The title usually has some words in it that are discipline specific, and you as a layperson may not quite know them yet. But please read on, because you know what happens when you read things that you don't understand? You start developing understanding. Next, the authors may be varied. Sometimes there's more than one. Additionally, we will know who they're affiliated with. We will know some of their qualifications. We might even be able to write them or knock on their door or call them. A lot of information is provided about the authors. It is not a mystery who the authors are. You can actually research the authors. You can track them on Twitter and see what else they're doing. Are they famous, infamous? Are they respectable? You can ask all of these things. The abstract, beware. Probably you think it's enjoyable and easy, but no, it is written by the author. An author's worst of all, it probably in some cases may not present a fair thing of what the research actually did. And sometimes it's not really the author or researcher's fault. They wrote the abstract at the beginning of the process of getting published. Through the peer review process, sometimes that paper comes back quite a few times and it gets corrected, accepted. Nobody goes back to change the abstract. So when you've had, and you will, you might have already experienced, found an article where the abstract and the content of the article do not marry up, that's usually what has happened. But what you will also love will be the literature review. This is not really the author's work. They're telling you about what they've read. Sometimes when you see more than one author in the parentheses or in the piece, that lets you know those 5 or 6 or however many are included. Those authors and researchers all came up and supported the same idea. That's a lofty and fantastic building of evidence. So absolutely look through that critically when you see those pieces. Then consider that this is not the author's piece, and if you quote from those pieces, sometimes that's going to be a secondary source. And that usually has a different citation part and also a different level of evidence, because that author or researcher could have taken something out of context, and your best review is always the full text, never the abstract. Always the full text, not the literature review. You want to be able to review those things in full context before you use them, or make a notation that it is a secondary source and whatever citation style you're using, so that you've acknowledged you have not read that entire piece as well. Then there will be references. But let me warn you, New England Journal of Medicine can have a letter to the editor, which has none of these parts or body. They can have 30, 40 references, but it's still a letter to the editor. Make sure you're looking for these pieces. Even a book review can be 40 pages and have many references. It will not have these pieces. It will come up in your search for scholarly articles, but it will not be, well, your search will be inside the scholarly journal. Again, I'll show you that, but it will not necessarily be the thing that meets these conditions. So make sure that you're looking for something with a method, protocols, ethical considerations. It tells you who they included and excluded. They tell you findings, and they have this, which I think is one of the most beautiful and interesting pieces of research articles: when it appears, limitations or discussions, or some of the heading, and what it usually contains is how this didn't quite work out. In the scientific method, that's not a failure. A lot of things will not work out. That's how you find things that work. So this is a beautiful piece, but it also might tell you that the research didn't really work out. Maybe they started with 500 people, but only 20 people actually did the piece. So make sure you absolutely read that, and also read the conclusion. In fact, read your scholarly articles backwards. Skip out on the abstract. Make sure you read these meaty pieces that is the information the researchers and authors are communicating to you, the user of this information. Now then, I'm going to put here some types of things I use in my search strategy. I have winnowed down the 3 most important things that I use on a daily basis that are extremely effective. And I, your librarian, totally wish to share this with you. I smirkingly call it all the search tricks, but I'm telling you, these three are the top of the line. First of all, truncation. It's going to help you get more out of a word. And what I mean by this, many words have different tenses, they have different suffixes, or different, like it'll start out with a common part of the word, and there's things after it, but those things after it are also valuable to you in your research. Let's look here, especially in sociology and psychology, trauma. Now, this doesn't have to be a word that stands alone. What it needs to be is a word that stops at a common place wherein the tenses and suffixes and other pieces and aspects of the word come out. It needs to stop there. For trauma, see tick, see tizing, I just stop at the A. Nurse, if I want nursing, nurse and nurses, I stop at the S because here's the ing, here's the ed and the s. I see that this is the most common space. This is going to help you capture more information because not everyone uses the same version of a word for a thing. And it'll keep you from going back and forth. And if you're in a really tight, specific search, it's really going to open it up for you. This is really very helpful in the health fields, I will say most specifically. Now, the next one is phrase searching. If you search global warming, global could be in the first paragraph and warming could be in the third. That's not what you're trying to do. And when we're talking about the disciplines we're going over today, mental health, it would be a great example. Put that in quotation marks so that mental and health come up in the same place. And as you start working, you'll start seeing those phrases. It has to be a natural phrase, not a forced one. I was talking to a student about global warming as a phrase search, and they put getting hotter in quotations. Not quite the same thing. It should be a naturally flowing phrase often used in that particular discipline. And as you do your research, you will discover more and more of those. The next thing that is really very strong and powerful, not just in your research using databases and other types of research subscriptions, it also works in Google, specifically Google Advanced. And if you've never used Google Advanced, please check that out. But today I'm talking about Boolean searching, AND, and OR, or NOT, big letters usually not. Now, if I'm looking for job satisfaction and I search job and AND, satisfaction, I'm going to get between those the things that cover that job and satisfaction. Or is how you can string together synonyms, put them together in a search so you don't have to search each idea. So here I could put job or work or employment, and I would get all of those in the search and not have to jump around and keep doing it. Frankly, I keep a list of these as I'm working on research. The not gets rid of things you do not need or do not want. Not. So, coming from Florida, if I am doing a search on Florida plants, I have search results that come back with nuclear plants. I'm going to change my search to be Florida plants, not nuclear. Okay, now we're going to go into some actual works. I'm going to start with Psychology and Behavioral Sciences collection. Then I'm going to show you how to use our EBSCO publisher to change databases so you can build your own database. When I'm talking about EBSCO, Proquest, JSTOR, which may also be Ithaca, Gale, and these other things, I'm talking about database publishers. These databases contain articles, research, newspaper, newswires, all sorts of things all together in one place. And you can actually break them down to just find what you need to find. These are, when I say something like databases, I mean Netflix, I mean Hulu, I mean Amazon Prime, because these are all collections of digital materials. They give you a search, just like Netflix. Sometimes they tell you if you've seen this, you'd love to see that. You have different ways to search and look and review and connect information. So already you're using databases every day. So switching to these and understanding why a database that we have, that we've paid for versus free and open TV, you might have a steep and important quality difference. So when your professor says to use library materials, that is the place they're trying to get you. I want to make sure you know how to get to the library. Go to bigbend.edu, go to academics, select library. You will come to this page. You will go to databases A to Z. The library catalog is the print books that are available, and you can get them delivered to the curbside along with other technology should you need it. So look for those here. And remember when I talked about if you need to come in and study, this is where you make that space request at this time. So these two pieces are really important for you to get all your library services, as well as, let me pull it over, Ask a Librarian. It's available 24/7 and you can get help. So let me kind of line this up. I'm going into databases A to Z. I don't care if you go to Harvard, New York State, any sort of future college or university you go to, you're going to be confronted with the A to Z database list. It is an alphabetic listing. It's nothing mysterious, just an alphabetic listing of their holdings. You'll see here we have 134. I believe the University of Washington has 700. One of the ways we use as librarians to help you is we have database lists. Unfortunately, we can't pinpoint it to each person's. That's why we have class guides where we can work with your professor or instructor to build something that's customized. But without that, all we have to reach you, young scholar, will be this list. So I'm going to go databases by subject, and I'm going to go to psychology. We also have a listing for sociology. I'm going to go here, psychology and behavioral sciences. We do put best bets up here, and that's based on usually not what we think is best, but what students have used the most successfully for the type of work they're having to do in their university or college. So that is what best bets mean. When you come here, really make sure you pay attention and do not include the act, bid, bend, and everything should go fine. If you do get a security certificate warning after this point because it's an authentication place, just overwrite that when you see the easy proxy. It's going to be fine. So here we are. I'm going to use something easy. I'm going to do anxiety and work. I'm not going to do anything really super special for them, but this would be the place I could build something with truncation or a phrase. I could put anxiety or depression if I'm using them in similar ways. But in sociology and psychology, that might not hold up. So make sure you use the discipline's ideas of what one thing is. It may not be the same thing. So I'm here, but look up here. It says choose databases. I don't have to just use this database. I can go through it and add consumer health. I could add alternative health. There's a bunch of nursing type things I have access to. I could also add newspapers, ebooks, all sorts of things. What might I do for this? I might add family studies abstracts. So if you're in here looking for business information, you could add psychology with it. And that will be your personalized space to find a lot of great information. So if I've add family studies abstracts, and I'm going to put in professional development collection, because that too can help out with this type of search. And it has an odd name, so you would never know that to be true, but if you're working on something that has to do with a discipline, it's usually something pretty good to use. So I start out kind of big, anxiety and work. I don't really start tuning up some of my truncation and other things until I hit this page. I see I have 5,000 things. I'm going to make sure I select full text. What you see is what you get. Very important. I'm down to 3,000. I see that my professor or my rubric said you can only use the past 5 years, so I'm going to change the date of the items I see. If I know that my professor said I only can use scholarly articles, I will come here and make sure you see this, and I will select scholarly journals. Again, it is a user needs to select what is actually the scholarly article that is needed. So I see this as a variety of images. When you see images like this, you can pretty much understand that this is quantitative. If you don't know what that is, you can actually use it as a research. Remember, quantitative is the research methods that's using data sets, numbers, and things like that. Qualitative are open-ended questions, diaries, journaling, interviews, and things of that nature. So if I put that in my search, it's going to find those articles that may be more specific to the quantitative method. In this particular database, I see these. That's encouraging. This talks about the gaming, and this says they use mixed methods. So if they use qualitative and quantitative, if you have a professor that wants to use one or the other, ask them if mixed is okay. So I'm going to go into the PDF full text because my database can only search if it's a journal, not a scholarly article. So I'm here. I see I have one title. I do see it says Journal of Family Therapy, which is encouraging but not definitive. I do not see an abstract. That's not a game changer. I'm seeing a theoretical framework. So what I'm looking at, oh no, here we are. We have the methods. The theoretical framework shows the setup for the methods. We're seeing how they're measuring their analytic approach, and you can see that the quantitative method is well represented, and we already know it said it was fixed method. So here we go. So we see we have all of the pieces, the explanations, and we keep going because sometimes these can be lengthy. And we're reaching an end here. Let me back up and see if it said something else. Okay, so it's starting to talk about these things. Sometimes this may not be, it may not say it's a limitation, but sometimes there's a redefinition of ideas and things that precede the conclusion. Make sure you read those. And we have a conclusion. As you can see, the conclusions are often quite brief. Instead of the abstract, why don't you read that first and work your way backwards? You also see the references. You as a researcher can also critically think, not just through the methods and the other pieces, but you can also look at the references. Do they have a great deal of them? Are they spread out on the times? Do they have some things that are recent? Do they reference older, seminal, and classic works? This is also a place that you can look for other articles if you need to do so. So this is a pretty awesome example of an empirical article. There's also mixed methods that is peer-reviewed in this particular journal. So that meets all the points you would need. And here you have used EBSCO, you have built your own database, and you have found a group of compelling quantitative method articles. While we're here, I want to make sure you can also do one of the most important things you can do. Find the citation example. Do you notice I did not say find your references or your things you need for a bibliography that are correct? Because they're not. It says APA and AMA. This doesn't even tell you if it's 6th or 7th edition. I do believe it's 6th. And the rule here is to copy and correct these. Sometimes you'll see them like this under something to the side. On Proquest and some of the other databases, it'll be at the top underneath some quotation marks. These are rarely ever absolutely correct. So make sure that you make changes to them that will be good for your final grade. I don't know how to say that enough. You're going to have different professors that grade on citations and reference harder than others. So as a librarian, I want you to always write and do your papers to the hardest professor, instructor you will ever have. So always aim for excellence and correctness. And guess what? When it comes to references and citation, you can ask for help with a writing center. You can also ask for help from your librarian, like myself. If you come to me with an APA type thing, you'll find me absolutely particularly giddy. And this is the other thing I want you to know. So you're out there doing your research and you've ignored me. You are not using the library's databases. Your professor said to use library resources. You're like, no, I am not going to do that. I am going to Google. So what you need to do is go to publications when you find a paywall. Now you found the most awesome thing ever. You Googled it. You didn't do the full text search. You didn't escape the echo chamber. You did not escape how students and other researchers sometimes only use, and I mean 97% of people only use the first page of search results on Google, which is not, by the way, excellence in research at all. So suppose you ignored all of these warnings, which are real. Some of that was quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods in my reporting. But nonetheless, here we go. I want you to look for the publication in full text. There's several ways you can do that. Most of the databases have a drop-down called publications, and you can come, if you find that place that has that particular journal, you can't get to it. Suppose it's the American Sociological Review. I'm going to click this. And this is going to try to find it for me if it is inside of this item. And we do not have that because Sociology, and it's just not available in this particular database. And if you really need to find it, this is not a dead end. It's just one way to look for it. But sometimes in your research, you might have found a really good journal. This is also a place you can pop in to look for it. So Proquest is probably listed on every discipline. It covers everything from astronomy to zoology. It's very strong for sociology and psychology, as well as many other things. Like it has a great group of newspapers. Unfortunately, also news wires, which probably, in my particular evidence-based pyramid, is the lowest of the low. So here we are. We're seeing basic and advanced search. This is the advanced. You see you have and or not. You see you have full text. Again, I like to go in with the big part, anxiety, and I will put employment, but I'm going to put it back to here. So I might get employee, employed, employers. You'll see this is trying to help me out. I'm going to go do the search. Move it over and back. You'll see that I have far more results than I really need. I make sure it's selected for full text. And again, I want to show you this magic thing. It does not say scholarly articles. It says scholarly journals. I, as the researcher, will need to verify that my article meets the conditions that my assignment requires. So now we've halved our results. We can also look at the past 5 years, older or younger, whatever you need. And that is going to reduce a number of my pieces as well. We'll see here, I have students test anxiety. I'm not sure how employee came up with that, but sometimes these things may be a little bit off. So I'm going to go down. You'll see this sometimes presents you with these. I know by looking at that, that means this is probably a quantitative article. And I don't see page numbers like I would. I would be looking for over 5. I see multiple authors. I see frontiers in integrative neuroscience, likely going to be a quantitative article. So let me go into this, and I'm going to make sure by going to the PDF, which is the image provided from the actual article. I'm seeing a lot of things I like in this realm of figuring out what this is. Do you see these authors? You see we know who they are affiliated with. We see who edited, who reviewed. We're seeing a lot of things that say, I am credible. It has a complicated professional title and uses words unique to that profession. We see the introduction. The introduction is also the literature review. So you see where they're talking here about the DSM-5, which the library has, if you recall. This lets you know where they read the information. Now this is the authors and the researchers building up to their research question, which is usually just above the methods. This talks about their participants. They use 73 people from universities. Now, just kind of as an aside, once you start reading these, sometimes a lot of these studies pull from students from a university. When you're doing your critical thinking, wonder who they are in terms of age. If you're using some sort of health type thing and they're only using younger people, for instance. So really read those methods and participants with a very critical mind. So it's talking about the test batteries it's using. It's talking about results, numbers. It's giving the math. It gives our results and it gives them to you in a way that you can replicate and understand and see their work. And what we're looking for is it doesn't land with a solid conclusions, but we know that's what the last paragraph does. And it is pretty brief. It talks about acknowledgement. Sometimes you have ethics statement, and we see the references. Now, the next thing you want to do on Proquest, remember, or I didn't tell you yet, so know that Proquest has some things in overlap with Netflix. Hey, if you like this article, you will love this article. And you know what? These are some shared references and documents you may also want to look at. And you know what? This article's already been cited by 2 other people. If this article works, that might as well. And also, that research may overturn this research, so you kind of really need to know about that. And it gives you a set of keywords and subjects you may take into your research. Isn't that rather beautiful? We are going through more specialized databases, but for your work here at Big Bend Community College, and for a lot of your other things that you may encounter, just knowing Proquest is really going to give you a lot of research value until you learn about the other things your new college or university may offer for you. And again, when you read an assignment, make sure you look at the rubric and make sure you look at the assignment. If it asks you to use a specific database, use that. There's a reason you're being sent there. And if you cannot find it, try to look for the databases A to Z to see if it's on that list. And if you can't find it, always ask a librarian. At any portion of your assignment piece that you don't understand something, ask your professor to make it more clear. Ask your librarian to help you find these pieces. That's what we're here for. You're not expected to go it alone. So don't. Reach out to us. Now I'm going to go to the sociology portion, and I want to show you Social Work Reference Center. Now, this is social work, and somebody going into the social science may or may not end up in this area, because in sociology, you can end up all sorts of places, even end up becoming a lawyer, somebody working in a government department or in criminal justice systems, in so many ways. There's so many different places you could end up, and including an internship. So let's look at this piece closely to see what it may offer you if you do find yourself in that area. Also, it could be used for an information presentation because it's going to show you quick lessons on how to work with different groups that have these issues. It has quick lessons. It also has evidence-based care. Now, these evidence-based care sheets bring together a huge amount of different types of research that will be useful for your topic, so that you're not working from the gut or from how you think it might be, but rather how it has been proven to be, which is going to be much more value to the people you're helping out. The assessment tools only define the measures that you may use, but not the real things. But the rest of this is pretty top quality and will give you quite a bit of information if you need those words. You're not going to find those in many other places. So back to the sociology section, you'll see quite a few things because it is broad, and it may be that you're just doing things on other cultures and need culturegrams or EHRAF, archaeology and world cultures. All of this is in this area as well. You can also look them up by name. Also gender studies, global issues, all the things that would cover the great sweeping world that is sociology, including Academic Search Premier, which is EBSCO's version of the big Proquest database I showed you. It covers things from astronomy to zoology, so definitely you'll be able to find terms like that. I want to show you something called JSTOR, JSTOR. Many of your instructors or professors will absolutely love that you have access to this, and they may urge you to use it all kinds of ways. Follow their direction. They know of which they speak. Anxiety and job, I'm just going to type that in. It's sort of weak, but it will get me to the place I need to go. I want to show you this database. This thing goes back centuries. This thing has pamphlets, I think, from like the 1600s. It's really amazing. It may not be you need to go that far, but do you see how I have 8,000 pieces? That's really quite a bit. But one of the ways you can use your search strategy to narrow this down in this really rich, wonderful database that covers so many things. And again, you'll find out that your particular professors and instructors may really, really love come here. And what I'm looking for is psychology. They have 408 psychology journals. And I'm going to narrow down my research to that. And you see from here, it becomes much more something I can handle. Also, I can see that it has book chapters, may be useful, or journals. If you're looking for an article, may be more useful. You can go up in the advanced search and also narrow it down. These are beautiful. They're PDF. They're rich. You're going to make connections that you have never thought were ever possible. Almost anything you throw at this, you're going to find some really great, amazing work. So please enjoy JSTOR, sociology, psychology, especially literature, and absolutely history. I'm going to pop up to the LibGuides proper to go to the library catalog. I want to show you this and how it looks here. You can look for journals here. So I know so many of you, despite what I say, will try to find something on Google or other places, or you find something that you can't find full text, you've hit a paywall, come here and go to journal search. Now, one of the well-loved sociology journals is Context. So I'm going to click on that and try to find where I can find that in full text. On my library catalog, it's going to say it's available online. I am happy, but this is how you read it. This tells me 1, 2, 3, 4 different places that it's available, but see, the times are different. So if I have something that's recent, I want to go to consumer health, because I see it has most things from 2009, but it doesn't have the last 6 months available in full text. I probably will select this, but here you will have some options, so make sure you read these pieces and go in there. And about 85, well, probably 90% of the time, this will correct. This is going to be how you deal with getting past the paywall and finding those journals that your professor instructors think you should read. And this is very popular and very well loved, and I would read it from here in this case. And also this helps demonstrate if you're doing research like, oh, consumer health database. Yes, there is some overlap between sociology and psychology and the health sciences. This would also be a rich database for me to do my research. So while you're there, do some more work. And now I'm going to show you the magic, wonderful Whimsy Bonaudi library Google Scholar search that is better than the Google Scholar that you find randomly. This is one especially for you. To find this special Google space, Databases A to Z is the place to start. Go to G for Google, go to Google Scholar, and it has the tip here. Use Big Ben CC full text and other links to the far right margin, not titles. Now what that mysterious thing is a note to you. Absolutely. To kind of warn you about what is to come. Sorry about that. As you'll see from, I'm just hitting all the wrong things. I'm sorry. As you'll see, I'm bringing it up to the browser. I do have scholar.google.com, but I've added an institution code, and that is going to light this search up in a far better way. I have just a random title, and that's what you'd use. You find something, you can't find the full text, take and it's a scholarly article, or it's something your professor really wanted you to read. Come here to see if we have it. And this says that we do not, because I've just recently added JSTOR and it's not showing up quite yet. That's why you should also use the databases. Now I want you to know it's somewhat fallible. I also want you to know this has a lot of information for you. So this article was written in 1995 and it's been cited 71 times. Would you like to see who else used it? You can go through and look at these articles. Now, and this is what my mysterious thing means. If you click on the title, you're going to go to the paywall. It's a Taylor and Francis paywall. So I think it's going to want $40 for this article. But you go to Big Big Community College. We have bought the subscription database. So actually, this article should be here. It's going to kind of rinse you through the library catalog. You will get a choice. I'm going to go with this one. And I will say 85% of the time it will connect. And this has connected. And you have access to that full text and you can read it right now. And this is awesome. Now, if this was a failure, I would go back and get the title and do the search, because it might get this far and say, this cannot be found. Put the title in there and search the database, because at least it's gotten you that far. And that's really very important. Now, let me see if I can get back. There's a couple of backs here. I want to get you back to Google Scholar. While you're here, these are the other awesome things about it. You as a young person going through some of this academic research, also, I face this every day, by the way. Is this relevant? How is it accepted by other people? Are other people using it? And how are they using it? So the cited by lets you know. It's kind of a like button. It's the popularity context in terms of likes. This has been well used. But make sure you do look at the article because they also may be making fun of it. It could go both ways. So use that and this. Suppose, like me, I think I abbreviate things when I'm taking notes and I never remember what they are. And if you're working with scholarly articles, it is likely that Google Scholar has a citation for it in a citation style. Now, this is hardly ever correct, but if you've missed out on the volume or issue numbers or beginning or ending page numbers, and you did not write down the journal title correctly, which I do all the time, this puts it out for you. Sometimes you will find the abbreviation of the journal title in the sciences. This will help you see what it is. All you have to do is do a simple search. So I realize this is really, really long, but it's all very, very important information that I hope you'll find useful. And I hope if you get nothing else out of this, I really want you to remember, read your rubric, look at your assignment, and follow the directions to find the information they need. And if you're told to go to use a certain resource at the library, that you know where that is. And always, always, always ask your librarian. We have a lot of knowledge. We'll be able to work through some things with you. And I have to tell you, when you ask us something we don't know and we need to learn, we are so absolutely delighted. So make your library happy. Ask for help. We'll be glad to help you out. Have a great day.